Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Everyone, we have had technical difficulties connecting, and I really hope that you guys can hear me. Can someone please confirm that you can hear me? Okay, you can hear me. Good. All right. So, alhamdulillah, wa salatu salam ala rasulillah. Welcome to our weekly session on healing the heart with the Quran, or tazkiyah bil Quran. Uh, Okay, I have to go live on Facebook as well. As I mentioned, we're having some technical difficulties, so just give me a moment as I set up the live video stream for Facebook. Okay, so it looks like challenges continue. All right, alhamdulillah. We are good to go. All right, so once again, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to our session. Um, Thank you. Welcome to our session on Tazkiyah al-Quran. Last week, we had some challenges right towards the end. We were going through the just we were going through Surah Quraysh. These are some of the points that we were going through, and towards the end, we had some challenges, technical challenges, and I really hope that we don't have them today. But let me just start with a review of what we covered last time. Firstly, we said that things just don't happen on their own. Everything is part of a plan by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Things are going well, that's part of Allah's plan. Sometimes things don't go well, even at a society's level, and that's still part of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan. The blessings that we take for granted, that we've been given, have been specially dedicated for us and by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the purification of these blessings, what are we supposed to do is that we have to do our job as worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we said that worship in the form of gratitude to the Creator, saying our thanks to the Creator, sustainer, and owner of everything, is the kind of like the zakat that we pay for the blessings that we've been given. Now, I also wanted to share with you this dua that I did not get to do last time. This is a dua that we are recommended to make at the end of a prayer. So when you finish the salah, this is a good dua to make at that time. Allahumma a'inni ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husni ibadatik. So you say salam, and after that, you say this dua. The hadith behind this is also very interesting. The Prophet ﷺ was speaking to Mu'adh ibn Jabal, who was considered one of the wisest people in this ummah. So the Prophet ﷺ was speaking to him, and he held him by his hand, and he said, "O Mu'adh, by God, I love you for the sake of Allah." And he said it again, "I love you for the sake of Allah." And then he said, "I'm going to give you an advice that that at the end of every prayer, every salah that you finish, every namaz that you finish, say these words." So this is what the the Prophet ﷺ recommended. And it was a recommendation, of course, for Mu'adh, and Mu'adh, of course, narrated this hadith to us, and it's a recommendation for us as well. And this is what it means. Oh Allah, help me remember you, be grateful to you, and to worship you in an excellent manner. And to fulfill our job as the worshippers, as the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this dua will help us do that. That's what we got from Surah Quraysh. Today, inshallah, we'll be doing the next surah, which is Surah Al-Ma'un. The word Ma'un means small kindnesses. And I'll set the context for this, inshallah, and it'll make sense. But I do want to point out that this is a surah that was revealed in pretty much the first year, around the first year of Mecca. The Prophet ﷺ, had been given the blessing of Islam and the responsibility to carry this message. And very early part, if it's not the first year, it's like the very early part of his life in Mecca. And this surah is like a personality test. If any of you has taken, if you've taken a personality test prior to this, can you please share with me what that test is like? What is a typical personality test like? If you've taken it, just go ahead and type it in the chat window. What does it look like? What happens in the personality test? Generally, they're multiple choice questions, right? It kind of looks like a survey. But what are those questions about? What do those questions, what do they ask us about? Just go ahead and type your response in the chat window. And in the meanwhile, I'm going to share with you the kinds of people that lived in Mecca when the Prophet ﷺ was given Islam. There was this one kind. These were people like Abu Lahab, his uncle, who despised Islam. And then there were other people who actually really cared about connecting themselves to God. So one example of that is Waraqah bin Nawfal, the relative of Sayyidah Khadija, radiallahu anha, who she took the Prophet ﷺ to, and who passed away before things really started going. But this person was a believer. So there were some people like that in Mecca, and then there were people like Abu Lahab. And yes, as our sister says, priorities and how will we deal with options given in life. Thank you very much. So that's what a personality test is. And I mentioned that Surah Al-Ma'un is like a personality test. Our dealings with other people based on, yes, so sure, whether a person is introvert, the openness or creativity, that kind of thing. Imagine that a personality test is also evaluating your character rather than evaluating your personality. So an introvert and an extrovert can both be very good people or very bad people, but that's personality. Imagine if we are doing a character test and our priorities and how we deal with different options in life are being assessed when it comes to our character as to whether or not we're a good person. So I mentioned in Mecca, there were good people and not so good people. There were people like Abu Lahab, and there were many others like him, As bin Wa'il, for example, and Jamil bin Mu'ammar. These are some names that we get, and there were any other people like that in Mecca. These were Abu Jahl. These were the leaders of Quraysh. But then there were other people. I mentioned Waraqah bin Nawfal was one. There was another man like Waraqah bin Nawfal who had passed away, who the Prophet ﷺ did meet him, but he passed away before the Prophet ﷺ became a prophet. His name was Zayd bin Amr bin Nufayl. Long name, but I'm specifying and spelling out the name for a reason. And it will make sense in a moment. So Zayd, the son of Amr, the son of Nufayl. So this man believed only in one God. And his behavior was very different from the behavior of Abu Lahab and the likes of Abu Jahl and all those people. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks in Surah Al-Ma'un about a certain type of character. And we can almost apply that as a character test on people like Abu Lahab and Abu Jahl and people like Waraqah bin Nawfal and Zayd bin Amr bin Nufayl. And then we can apply that character test on us. Now the Meccan period is long gone, the Medina period is coming long gone. Muslims have now spread all over the world. We have the message of Islam. Islam is complete for us. We can apply it on our own lives. The same personality test, the same character test, okay? Let's go through Surah Al-Ma'un and let's apply the test. The surah goes like this. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين. Have you seen the one who denies the final judgment? This is the first set of options in the character test. Do you deny the day of judgment or do you accept the day of judgment? Denial of the day of judgment. Okay, if the person chooses deny the day of judgment, let's continue. فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُعُّ الْيَتِيمِ when you come across an orphan, you have to deal with an orphan. An orphan really is the weakest person in a society. It has no parents to take care of it. They take care of him or her. This orphan, how are you going to deal with this orphan? Two options. One, you're going to deal with this orphan in a kind and compassionate manner. Or option two, it sounds unimaginable, but you repulse the orphan, you push the orphan away. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this character test, if somebody picked, I deny the day of judgment, that's the kind of person who will end up pushing the orphan away. We're not saying that everyone who rejects the day of judgment is going to do it all the time, but we're saying that the likelihood that the person who's repulsing the orphan away is got to be someone who thinks like that, who denies accountability, who believes that they will not be held to account. Sure, I was talking to you about Makkah, and that's where these surah was revealed. But I'll share with you something interesting. We're all appalled, shocked really, by what's happening in Gaza, isn't it? We are, it's hard for us to fully understand how human beings can act like this. We are, it's so unbelievable and incredible for us that we sometimes wonder whether the news we're getting is accurate. Well, most people of that faith, and among them, many of them don't even have faith; they're just atheists. But the ones who have faith, people in Israel, followers of this right-wing Judaism, they do not believe in a day of judgment the way we do. For them, the day of judgment involves the Messiah. The Messiah will come and judge them, and this world will then become their paradise. And they will be judged based on whether they were true to the Messiah or not. It's very, very different. So they deny the day of judgment. And I have to be accurate, in a scholastic kind of way, because there are some small sects among the Jews who still believe in the day of judgment. But by and large, the group that we're talking about, the Zionists that we're talking about, they deny the day of judgment. That is linked to the kinds of cruel actions that they take, because they believe they can do whatever they want. They will not be held to account for it. Wala, and this is now the third option in the character test. Wala yahuddu ala ta'amil miskin. And this person does not encourage the feeding of the poor. There are two levels, right? One is that you feed the poor yourself. The second one is that, yeah, you don't do it yourself, but if somebody else is doing it, you kind of encourage them. That's like a lower level. But this person wouldn't even do that. Which means that someone who is denying the day of judgment is the kind of person who's likely to be unkind to the weakest in the society, and is the kind of person who is likely to not even encourage the feeding of the poor. Thus far, it sounds like we're talking about people who are not Muslims. Okay, fine. And this applied to Makkah. And I gave you the example of people like Abu Lahab and Abu Jahl. And then I said there was this other example of Zayd bin Amr bin Nufayl and Waraqa bin Nawfal. Let's come back to that story. I just want to make sure that I share an important detail. This is before Islam. This is before the Prophet ﷺ was blessed with the message. Zayd bin Amr bin Nufayl used to believe in only one God. He would not eat anything that had been offered to the many idols in Mecca. And people in Mecca would receive all kinds of food all the time. People from all over Arabia would come, even sometimes from outside of Arabia, from East Africa would come and visit Mecca, and they would offer items. And Zayd bin Amr bin Nufayl wouldn't do that, just like the Prophet did not. Zayd bin Amr bin Nufayl used to go around and look for, he would meet people and look for some way of understanding how he could worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People would see him hanging on to the cloth of the Kaaba, and he would be making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh Allah, I want to worship you the way you want me to worship you, but I don't know how. Of course, the Prophet ﷺ had not been given prophethood yet. Zayd bin Amr bin Nufayl was a believer like that. And what actions did he take, or what do we observe, or what do we know about Zayd bin Amr bin Nufayl? Remember that story about people in Arabia, some people in Arabia used to bury their daughters? Well, Zayd bin Amr bin Nufayl used to go to those people and say, instead of burying your daughter, give her to me, I will bring her up as my own. So he would spend his wealth his time, his family's efforts to bring up daughters. There's a narration that says, and we don't know the authenticity of this narration, but there is this tradition that says he was responsible for taking care of 800 girls. 800 girls. And I had mentioned to you earlier in one of the earlier sessions that not every Arab used to do that, but it was a common practice and some people used to do that. But many of those girls were taken care of by people like Zayd bin Amr bin Nufayl who believed in God and believed that he would be held to account, even in that society. Now, this was, thus far, our conversation was primarily about people who are not Muslims. Let's also talk about people who are Muslims. The surah continues. It talks about people who pray. But what kind of prayer? Now let's think of the same personality or character test. Let's start applying it to ourselves as well. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. So woe to those who pray. This hypocrites part has been added by the translator, and yes, it is correct, but it is not all encompassing. So the actual words are woe to those who pray. This hypocrites part, that's not in the Arabic. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ الَّذِينَ, which, woe to those who pray. It doesn't really make sense, which is why this is a verse in the Quran which it is recommended you should not read this verse by itself, because if somebody's entering the room and they understand Arabic and you're saying فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ, woe to those who pray, that makes no sense until you add the second part, which is الَّذِينَ, which ones? هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ, the ones who are unmindful of their prayer, who don't really care so much about their prayer. They're careless about their actions in the prayer. They're not vigilant about the prayer. They don't pray regularly. And why would a person do that and still pray? These are the people, الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءُونَ. It's because whenever they do pray, they do so to show off. They want other people to see them pray. They want other people to note that they're praying and kind of acknowledge their religiosity, their very public religiosity. These same people are likely to have these traits. These are people who pray. I want you to remember how this surah started. The first item among the character tests was, these are people who reject the day of judgment, which means in this case, these people are praying, but their belief in the day of judgment does not seem to be very strong. وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَاعُونَ, and these same people refuse to give even the simplest aid. Ma'un is an Arabic word which means the smallest act of charity that we would do with our family, friends, neighbors. Somebody asks for to borrow an item from us, and we give that item out of charity, out of a sense of charity. A neighbor asks to borrow something, or let's say we have something to share. We share a little bit with our neighbors. It is said that whenever we make soup, the sunnah way of making soup, shorba, is that you add a little bit of water, extra water. Why? Because you will end up with, let's say you don't have a lot of meat or vegetables, you add a little bit of extra water so that you're able to share whatever you've cooked with your neighbors. That's the sunnah way of making this stuff. These are the small acts of kindness. This is al-ma'un. Now, we've just seen the complete surah, and this complete surah is a test, kind of like an itemized test of our character. Let's list this test of character. What does that look like? It looks like this. And I've divided it up into two forms. On the left-hand side, you see let's say the non-Muslim form of it. On the right-hand side, you see the kind of Muslim form of it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in the first form, this kind of a person, the Abu Lahab, Abu Jahl, and among the so-called Muslims, it will be Abdullah bin Ubay, the guy in Medina who was the greatest hypocrite. That kind of person. These are people who reject the truth of Islam and the Day of Judgment, number one. Number two, they rebuke orphans. Number three, they do not encourage the feeding of the needy. And then the other form, they show off their religiosity. They are mindless during prayer. Actually, this is not correct. It's not mindless during prayer. They're mindless off prayer. That's the word that is used in the Arabic, so I should say it like that. So they're mindless off their prayer. And then thirdly, they don't give or share small kindnesses. You see, in Islam, our iman actually consists really of our Islam, or our actions consist really of two things. If we do these two things, that is what completes our Islam. Number one is our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and whatever He has said. That's the first part. The second part is serving the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That includes how we treat other people. If we just take care of these two things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes care of the rest. Our effort should be in taking care of these two things, serving Allah and serving His creation. That's what Islam is. We fulfill these two with good intentions, we've got it made. And this last part, okay, so somebody's reminding me about the question between Humaza and Hamaza. Yes, I will, inshallah. I'll get to that in a moment. Let me just make sure that I wrap this up quickly. So as I was saying, in Islam, we basically have these two things. Notice that this surah ends, the last item is وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَاعُونَ. They don't even share small kindnesses. You borrow a pair of scissors from a neighbor, for example, and if a neighbor asks you for a pair of scissors, and you say, I don't really want to share my scissors with anyone, so I don't know, I'm going to make something up, and so my scissors are broken or something like that. That kind of behavior reflects a very low character. It is indicative of, if somebody's doing that, that person probably also then shows off their religiosity. And that person probably also is unmindful of their prayers. Once again, it's off the prayer, not in the prayer. So, and here's the difference. If it had said, hum fi salatihim sahun, who are unmindful in their prayer, then we would all be in trouble, because sometimes we're praying and we're unmindful, right? Where the mind kind of drifts off. That would be fi salatihim sahun. But it says an salatihim sahun, which means they're unmindful of their prayers, which means they don't really care so much about praying to Allah. It's not a big deal to them. It's not important to them. And when they do it, they do it because they want to show off. So once again, I was saying ma'un, people who share small kindnesses, these are then people who will be mindful of their prayer. These are then people who will, as we had seen in the early part of this surah, they will encourage the feeding of the poor. They will have that compassion, and they are concerned about being held accountable on the Day of Judgment. It starts with al-ma'un, the small kindnesses. So when you come across someone who is that kind of a stingy person, who would not even give a little bit, that ma'un, then know that there are other aspects of their character that you can extrapolate, you can kind of get to from that. I'm going to end with a very quick story, and then I'll come to the question that the sister asked. If you have read some of the work by Ishfaq Ahmed, you would know of the term that he uses for people who share small kindnesses. That term is, he uses the term baba or babe for plural. So baba, his definition of a baba is someone who is kind towards other people, but does not want to be repaid for that kindness, and does not necessarily want that kindness to be known. Yes, that's right. So that's like the sister said, baba. So this person is the kind of person that, if this character test of Surah Al-Ma'un was applied to them, then we would know that, no, this person is not someone who rejects the Day of Judgment. This person is someone not like Abu Jahl, not like Abu Lahab, not like Abdullah bin Ubay. This is the kind of person like Waraqa bin Nawfal. This is the person like Zayd bin Amr bin Nufail. That's the kind of person we all should want to be too. So one story, just to give you an example of a Baba, is Ashfaq Ahmed says that many newspapers are very good at reporting crimes that take place when somebody is away from their home, but they don't report good stories. And that means that people's perception of the world around them is that it's all dangerous, everything is going wrong, and everyone's out to get them. But there are many Babas around, and we should be mindful of the fact that many of the people around us are actually the kind of people who will do the ma'un. So one example he gives is of a person who came to see someone, and he noticed that they weren't home, but their door was opened. It was open. It seems like they left in a hurry, and they left the door open. So he became concerned that these people, their home could be robbed. So he went inside, and he noticed that they had obviously left in a hurry. So there were things strewn about, and dishes had not been washed. So this guy washed the dishes, cleaned the house, organized it, then locked it, and then gave the key to the neighbors, and then left. So when they came back, they noticed the house locked, and eventually the neighbor came out, and the neighbor said, here's your key. Someone came to see you, and they didn't even know who it was, but someone came to see you, and he gave us this key. And so they opened the lock, they went inside. The house had not been robbed. It was completely, everything was there, and it was very neat and well organized and clean. This guy, who nobody knows his name, is an example of a Baba. Somebody who does kindness whenever he can. Yeah, it's in my power to do this, to help these people out, so I'll do it. Because the connection is with God. He's not expecting a return from these people. He's expecting a return from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's something for us, all of us, to aspire to. I'm going to eventually give you guys homework, but let me just go through the lessons and then answer the question. The key lessons are, number one, our iman is manifested in two areas. I said the first one is rituals, which is our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a very ritualistic sort of way, as ordered by Allah in prayer, fasting, pilgrimage. That's the first one. The second one is how we treat the creation of Allah, which is through compassion and kindness. These two things are the critical parts of our faith. And it also means that unkind and uncompassionate behavior always goes together with no fear of accountability on the Day of Judgment. It's the homework. Inshallah, you will go through Surah Al-Ma'un in this homework, and I want you to always take Surah Al-Ma'un every time you recite it as a test of your own character, as a reminder. Now, coming to the question that the sister asked about Humaza and Hamaza. It's actually not Hamaza, it's Hamazat. Hamazat. So, وَقُلْ أعوذ بالله من أعوذ بالله من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بالله أن يحضرون. I'm sorry, I'm not reciting one word correctly. It says أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بالله أن يحضرون, something like that. This is in Surah Al-Mu'minun. That's Hamazat. And this is a recommended dua that we make this dua to protect ourselves from the waswas, from the whispering of the shayateen. And then the other word is humaza, which shows up in Surah Al-Humaza at the very beginning. وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ, which means woe to every, and then the word humaza and then the word lumaza. And these two words are very close to each other. So the word humaza, I'm going to take one of the definitions, even though there's more than one. One of the definitions is someone who either slanders or backbites. Someone who slanders or backbites, which means in your heart, the idea comes up about someone else who is not relevant to, or who's not present at that time, and then you say something bad about them. That would make you a humaza. May Allah forbid. So anyone who does things like that as a habit regularly is a humaza. Not once, not twice. Humaza, the ta marbuta at the end indicates that person does it as a habit, does it all the time. That's the humaza. Somebody who slanders or backbites. The other word, hamazat, or the whisperings of shaitan, the two are linked because hamazat seems to be the plural word of humaza, which means that whenever someone backbites, it's actually a whispering of shaitan that is happening in the heart that triggers them, and then they listen to that whispering and they bring it up to their tongue. Hamazat is the shaitan doing it frequently in our hearts. That's the connection between humaza and hamaza. Both of them are whisperings of shaitan. In one case, our action is triggered from. I hope that answers that question. And so this was Surah Al-Ma'un, short surah, quick surah. We recite it regularly. And I hope that inshallah, the next time you recite it, you remember that in the end, it is our character that will matter. It is not the total quantity of our actions that we will do so we can count, I did this many good deeds. It is actually the two things that I reminded you guys of. Number one, our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is done through prayer. And second one, how we treat other people. That's Islam, my brothers and sisters. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from me and from you. And inshallah, I will see you guys next Saturday. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept. Assalamu alaikum.